The restaurant buzzed with low chatter, glasses clinking under the dim golden lights. Maria, a single mom barely making ends meet, was working the late shift as a server. At the corner table sat a sharply dressed man, his posture tense, his eyes distant as he endured the shallow laughter of his date. Maria noticed how often he checked his watch, how his smile never reached his eyes. When the woman stormed off after complaining about his boring lifestyle, Maria quietly approached and asked if he was all right. He gave her a grateful smile that softened his tired face. When he rose to leave, she saw the awkward hesitation in his steps, as if he wasn't used to walking alone. Out of instinct more than duty, Maria walked him toward the door, joking lightly to lift his mood. "Don't worry," she teased, "bad dates build character." For the first time that night, he laughed, not the forced chuckle he gave earlier, but a real one, deep and warm. She didn't know she was escorting Alexander Reed, a CEO worth millions, only that she was helping a man who looked desperately lonely. Outside, the night air was crisp. He lingered, asking her about her life. Maria admitted she was raising her son alone and working 2 jobs to keep the lights on. Instead of pity, he listened with fascination, as though her strength was something extraordinary. He found himself sharing more than he ever did on a first meeting, about how success had cost him companionship, about the silence that echoed in his mansion when he came home each night. She didn't recognize his last name, and he didn't correct her when she called him Alex. The next evening, he returned, not for fine dining but to see her again. He asked if she could spare a break. They sat outside on the steps with paper cups of coffee, laughing about silly things. When a sudden drizzle started, he covered her with his coat, ignoring his expensive suit. Something in that small gesture told Maria this man wasn't like the others she'd met. For him, it was the first time he felt seen, not as a CEO, not as a name on magazine covers, but as a man who wanted connection. By the end of the week, he offered to walk her home after her shift. She hesitated, but his sincerity won her over. When they reached her modest apartment, her little boy ran out, clinging to her legs. Alexander's expression softened instantly, as though the missing piece of his world had been found in that single moment. Maria watched him kneel to greet her son, realizing that the lonely man she had once walked out of a bad date was quietly becoming part of her heart. And for the first time in years, she dared to believe love might find her again. He pushed his chair back, the scrape of it loud against the polished floor, and stood as though relieved the evening was finally over. His date had left in a cloud of perfume and irritation, muttering under her breath about wasted time. Maria, holding a tray at her side, caught the way his shoulders sagged the moment the woman disappeared through the doors. She hesitated before stepping closer, her voice gentle. "Rough night?" she asked, tilting her head with a faint smile. The man blinked, surprised by her tone, then let out a breath that carried both amusement and exhaustion. "You could say that," he admitted, his mouth curving slightly. Maria shifted the tray to one hand, teasing lightly, "Don't worry, bad dates build character. Though from the look on your face, I'd say you're already an expert." For the first time all night, his laughter rang out, unpolished and real. It startled him as much as it did her. He seemed lighter suddenly, almost boyish, as if someone had pulled back the curtain on his carefully controlled demeanor. Maria noticed how the tension left his jaw, the way his eyes, a striking gray blue, warmed as they met hers. When he reached for his coat, he looked uncertain, as though unsure where to go now that the performance of the date was over. Maria instinctively moved with him, her steps matching his, guiding him through the narrow space between tables and toward the wide glass doors. It wasn't part of her job, but something about him made her want to make sure he left in better spirits than he had arrived. As they reached the entrance, the quiet hum of the city spilled in from outside. He turned back to her, lips parted as if to speak, then shook his head with a small smile. "Thanks," he murmured, "for walking me out." She lifted a shoulder in a casual shrug, though the warmth in her chest caught her by surprise. "Anytime," she replied, watching as he stepped into the night, the glow of the streetlights brushing over him like a secret she wasn't meant to know. Outside, the city was quieter than usual, the kind of calm that fell just after the dinner rush. A cool breeze rustled the awning above them, and Maria folded her arms loosely across her apron, unsure if she had lingered too long. But the man didn't leave right away. Instead, he paused beneath the soft glow of the street lamp, almost as though he wanted time to stretch. Do you ever feel like people see you, but they don't really see you? He asked suddenly, his voice low, carrying the weight of something more than casual small talk. Maria tilted her head, surprised at the vulnerability from someone she had just met. For a moment, she considered brushing it off with a joke, but there was something in his eyes, a quiet plea, a loneliness she knew all too well. All the time, she admitted softly. When you're a single mom, people either pity you or judge you. No one really asks what it's like, or how you're doing. Her words slipped out before she could stop them, and she immediately looked away, embarrassed at her own honesty. But instead of retreating, he leaned closer, as if her truth was the most important thing he'd heard in years. He smiled faintly, but it wasn't his polished smile from earlier in the evening. It was raw, tired, and grateful. You're stronger than anyone I've met tonight, he said, and there was no trace of flattery, just conviction. Maria felt a strange warmth spread through her chest, caught off guard by how much it mattered that this stranger noticed her strength. When she asked about him, he hesitated, then admitted in clipped sentences that his success came at a cost: friendships left behind, endless hours, a house that echoed with silence. He didn't use the word CEO, nor did he mention wealth, only that loneliness had become a routine. Maria didn't connect the dots, and he didn't correct her when she called him simply Alex. For once, he wasn't a title, a business, or a bank account. He was just a man, standing under a streetlight, talking to a woman who didn't expect anything from him but the truth. For a brief, suspended moment, Maria forgot about the time, her aching feet, and the bills waiting at home. And he forgot about boardrooms, deadlines, and the cold emptiness of his penthouse. It was just the two of them, two strangers, both weary, both finding an unlikely comfort in each other's company.